Hey guys, sorry about the lack of videos. I've been dealing with finals, graduation, losing all my footage, and a lot of other stuff. I should have more stuff out in the near future, but anyway, on to the good stuff. Overwatch is a fantastic game. It's incredibly fun, addicting, and I think it's well designed and decently balanced so far. Enough so of all of these things that I've committed an ungodly amount of time to it, usually a pretty big chunk of my conscious time during the day. One thing that really rubs me the wrong way though is how each of the maps is designed. Every single map feels so, I don't know, formulaic. Spawn point, choke point, open part, capture point, useless part, choke point, last point, end. I might as well be playing fucking Mario
Grassland, desert, forest, jungle, ice world, fire world, forest.
for how strictly every single map seems to adhere to that. But just for the sake of example, one more time. Spawn point, choke point, open part, capture point, useless part, choke point, last point, end. And really, I think the biggest problem with this isn't necessarily that it's formulaic. Certainly TF2 has some of that, but each map feels so restrictive and claustrophobic. Every single choke point is some tiny archway that is, the majority of time, the only way to go. When it's not, there's a tiny corridor offshoot path that only a handful of heroes can go down. But I'll talk about that later. If we compare the average first point of TF2 to that of Overwatch, and yes, I'm going to continue to compare one similar game to another, get the fuck over it, we can see that they are far more open, spacious, and allowing for more dynamic interactions than spamming the archway and bang your head into the archway for the entire first portion of the game. Not to mention some of the ridiculous sightlines that allow characters like Widowmaker to be way stronger than they normally would. I think certain maps have a few things right, like Dorado has a really good first point, with the exception of this offshoot path being essentially useless for 90% of the cast, and Hollywood's Wild West section is fairly excellent, but is marred by the issues on basically every other point of the map. I think spawn point locations need to be looked at too. Maps like Volskaya, Temple of Anubis, and Hanamura, even in an even game, always go as follows. Defenders hold them off at the first point for a few minutes, then lose a single team fight or even just a few members, and the spawn points are so far away that if you don't have a Symmetra or her teleporter isn't up yet, you automatically forfeit the first point. Then the entire rest of the game plays out on point B, but point B has a ton of tiny little easily spammed choke points, so the game generally ends up going the full length every single time. There may be an equal win rate on this map, but that does not mean the gameplay is fair. It's not fun to lose the first point just because two of your players died. It's not fun to slam your head into a brick wall for 8 minutes because point B is the impenetrable, unbreakable, power-rot stone of fucking tier. Doesn't feel like the offensive team outplays the defense on point A, and it doesn't feel like the defense outplays the offense on point B. It just feels like the map is fucking over both teams at different times. Badwater has reactive spawn shortcuts that close after a specific objective is taken that allow offensive players to have less than a 90-minute commute, and also gives them another incentive to try not to lose the early points. Speaking of incentive and reactive doorways, can we not have this giant blast door close on Gibraltar when we capture this area? It's not fun to be punished for pushing the cart farther. If we push up a little bit, then the door closes, then the opponent set up a defense around that area, it makes it almost impossible to push without being really well coordinated and having 3+ ults used simultaneously. If opening that door makes the area a gimme, or just as pointless an area as this one on Anubis, maybe it's time to adjust the spawn locations or the map terrain to achieve a more balanced area without making it a brick wall. Moving on, one of the biggest problems I see in this game with the few alternate pathways there happen to be is that there needs to be a viable reason to use alternate paths that isn't just flanking the enemy Widowmaker. TF2 map designers, both in community and in the company, did a great job of this, especially on maps like Borneo, Badwater, and Upward. Certain paths were more favorable than others, some were more direct, but all had equal viability. Maybe part of this has to do with the less specialized classes in TF2, but I still feel like there's merit to being able to flank properly with someone like Zarya, Zenyatta, or Reinhardt. Equal viability between paths goes hand in hand with a few other very important concepts. The objective does not always follow the most direct or useful route, and map verticality. Off the top of my head, Badwater has the cart go through a narrow tunnel while the majority of the fighting happens above ground on the first point, and upward has the cart going through a low ground tunnel position despite the wide open terrain on the surface. This creates interesting and dynamic team play and decision making, such as splitting the team up between the tunnel and the high ground, doing a full team high ground push to break a fortified position, then circling back for the objective. Stuff like that. In terms of map verticality, and really the side paths as a whole, it just feels very forced and gimmicky. Every time I see a small raised platform or window that is inaccessible to anyone without a wall climb, rope snake, or double jump, looking at you, Hanamura, my eyes roll so hard they pop out of my head. I'm reminded of this line from the Sunset Overdrive episode of Zero Punctuation, where Yahtzee says, "I think that the humor consultant thing gives the game away. Comedy designed by committee, shrink-wrapped Microsoft brand fun, registered trademark. Replace humor with fun, comedy with interesting movement, and Microsoft with Blizzard, and what do you get? Overwatch. Stop spoon-feeding me cool places to sit and interesting ways to get to advantageous positions. This is interesting and organic movement. This is not. The only time I've remotely felt like I've had freedom of movement is with Lucio, which requires skill, creative thinking, and map knowledge. But even this is marred by doodads all over the walls, bugginess like not clinging to a wall or being pushed off a wall for literally no fucking reason, and arbitrary rules like the only one ride per direction that dicks over a ton of potential. I can understand infinite wall rides being bad on a single surface, but a different wall facing the same direction should be okay. I'm reminded of a quote from the War Owl on his video about the new Doom multiplayer. The movement of this game is so dumbed down, it's not even a factor. Arena shooters live and die on their movement. Bunny hopping, rocket jumping, air strafing, whatever the hell was going on in Tribes. And that's how I feel about the movement in Overwatch. It feels like the maps were designed first, then the character movement was added later, then the maps modified to have some gimmick that uses the character's movement mechanics. I mean, seriously, look at this shit. What else could the terrain possibly be used for than for some dipshit to wall climb up there and spam down? Later in the same video, War Owl says the map is supposed to feel like a playground. Yeah, sure, you can always go down the slide the intended way, but how much fun did you have pretending the slide was a mountain and climbing up it, or climbing up those weird spider dome thingies upside down? I feel like there's very little in Overwatch that lets me play the way I want to, and a ton of things that put there to make the game easy or approachable, and exactly how Blizzard wants me to play it. I mean, just look at how they replaced rocket jumping with Pharah's rocket booster ability. Easier to use? Yeah. 10 times more boring and 10 times less potential? Yeah. With how open Blizzard is being with their development and how willing to make changes the devs have been, not only with this game, but in others, looking at you, StarCraft, I have hope that we can see improvements on the map design, both with current maps and future ones. It's not going to be easy, I think, but competitive game design has never been and will never be easy. That's the road you take when you make an esport. This isn't Blizzard's first rodeo with competitive games, and it's not their second, third, or fourth. I have faith that they'll figure out some fixes and changes eventually. My name is Walnut, and I'll see you guys next time.